Madeleine Lawler, CEO of RDA Mid-North Coast. Thank you for joining me today on Regional Champions.
Thank you. It's lovely to be here again. Today we're at Urilla, which is in Coffs Harbour, and it is this extraordinary library and art museum, and the council offices are above and chambers are above. It's a real revolution for Coffs Harbour in terms of services, I think. It's a lovely place. And the standing exhibition in the Urilla Arts Museum is a really interesting description of the story of Coffs Harbour in the region, and they've done beautifully, both in the establishment of the art gallery in the museum, but also the library facilities, which really also focus on young people and making libraries a space that's exciting, and in a place where I believe back around 2019 it was said that there was 40% functional illiteracy in the Coffs Harbour local government area.
Right.
So places and spaces like this for community are more important than ever. It's a big step up for services for this area, and we deserve it.
And I suppose also the population is growing, so it's incredibly important to keep up to date with what people need.
Yeah, I think we might be over the 80,000 in the local government area of Coffs Harbour now, which is a pretty significant regional area, and it is certainly one of the growth spots.
Yeah.
And so between Port Macquarie, which is in the south, which is I think approaching the 90,000 point, and Coffs Harbour, they're really two significant urban environments for my region. We go from Hunter, just on the border of the Hunter, right the way up through to Corindy's the last little town. And so that's the top of the local government area of Coffs Harbour. And we can't forget, of course, that the local government area of Port Macquarie also encompasses Lord Howe Island, and in a separate RDA we run the RDA for Norfolk Island as well. So we've got this extraordinary experience of supporting, I think, some of the country's most remote people, being our island communities that are separated by hundreds or 1,600 in Norfolk's case kilometres of water to get to Australia or the mainland for Lord Howe Island, as well as rural places, and then you've got these urban environments as well. And so the scope and nature of need is really diverse.
How do you balance that? How do you manage that?
Diane Wall is the Chief Operating Officer of the organisation. Between the two of us, we work the portfolio of both regions. There are some things that Diane takes the lead in. She's taken the lead on early childhood education and care. We've got some real crippling shortages of early childhood education and care in our environment, just like everybody else in Australia. But we do have Nambucca Valley, where only 1 in 6 kids has a place. So that makes it a childcare desert, and Kempsey's not far behind. And so with that enabling infrastructure, social infrastructure absent, then it makes it very difficult for employers and for people who really desperately need to be in the labour market with the cost of living as it is at the moment. So these are major challenges, and so Di's heading up that research piece and advocacy piece for us. And she's also heading up the modern slavery work that we're trying to do, which is trying to form a coalition of organisations that are supporting people who are in conditions that are subpar, really, and to try to arm people who are interested in supporting workers in our community with a bit more resource and information, so that they are able to avail themselves of the support that's actually present for them in their circumstances. And so it's a community-led response to modern slavery, with Coffs Harbour and Nambucca being 2 of the 3 areas singled out by the Anti-Slavery Commissioner of New South Wales. We've just decided that trying to get information where it's needed is probably a good place to start.
So modern slavery, I mean, I suppose a lot of people would think Australia, modern slavery. What does that look like here? What does it mean?
We are deeply reliant on migrant communities to undertake work in our community in many industries, and they are vulnerable people, and there is a real disparity in power and circumstances. I think even just knowing what you're entitled to or the way that the system should work, it's very difficult to get across that information if you are not speaking the same language, or if indeed the system makes it difficult for you to even get support in the first place. So it's different all across Australia, but in New South Wales we've got some challenges where the legislation that governs labour hire companies is actually it doesn't come with the sorts of safeguards and inspection powers that it does in other states. And so I believe it's New South Wales and Tasmania where the legislation that enables those labour hire companies to function just doesn't have enough safeguards in it, and is something that probably needs to change. But, you know, increasingly we hear the rhetoric around migrant workers in our community, and I've got to say that across my region we'd be absolutely lost without our migrant worker communities. And, you know, we get to work with them on the welcome experience as well, where we have people coming into the community to take up our absolutely critical work in essential work, particularly around health and social care. And, you know, we've got an absolute dependence on these people for the well-being of the people who live here. We really want to make sure that the folks who are working for us and with us in our communities get a fair go.
The welcome experience is hosted across the region?
Yes, it is present across the region, but our organisation runs it from the Nambucca Valley down to the mid-coast, so around Taree. In our area, we've got quite an unusual flavour of people who actually access the program. So we are supporting many people who are working as care workers in the aged care sector. And I think that speaks to some of the real pertinent challenges that our area has. So across the mid-north coast on average, we're almost approaching 30% of our population being over the age of 65. And so that means that servicing the needs of that community or that cohort of our community, it is right here on our doorstep now. We're undercooked and underfunded, and you know, the need is only increasing, and it's rapidly increasing. And so one of the things we're looking at this year is we are really wanting to do a bit of a push to help both state and federal governments understand that across the mid-north coast, and indeed probably into the north coast, our climate and our environment means that we are extremely popular for retirees. You know, the God's waiting room that we've been called in Port Macquarie particularly for a very long time is no joke, and it means that servicing that population, it's very expensive because the burden of disease gets far more prevalent when you are older. And so it's that our population needs a greater degree of care, despite the fact that our population size may not warrant a bigger budget, say. But, you know, there's lots to do when it comes to how we equip ourselves for, you know, we're at 30% now. The wave of people entering the 65 and older category, and the gaps really in the younger working population to be able to afford to live here, afford to take up the jobs in the care sector, and to service the needs of a very significant population that is ageing rapidly. It's a 5-alarm fire sort of happening here in the mid-north coast, and we need to think about that and really, I think, showcase different ways of addressing the needs of those populations.
RDA Mid-North Coast is doing some really important work in terms of agriculture.
We've got an interesting agricultural sector, so it's very different on the mid-north coast than it would be up on the tablelands or into the west, so it's not broadacre farming per se. We are working with our agricultural smallholders, particularly in the north of the region, because in our environment, smallholders are quite disadvantaged in terms of being able to get access to agricultural services that allow them to do things like provide a boutique branded product. So things like being able to have affordable abattoir and butchery services is something that's extremely difficult. Cold chain logistics, when you're really tiny, it's really challenging to try to run these businesses on small but beautiful parcels of land, and trying to provide a boutique product from your, you know, organic farm or whatnot. So our type of farming is different, and they need access to services. So we're working with the north part of the mid-north coast, so Bellingen and some Coffs Harbour, Kempsey and Nambucca, some of the smallholders in those areas to try to get access via establishment of cooperatives. So we've got those type of farmers, and then we've got this growing and quite incredible intensive horticulture. So we're doing the vast majority, I think, of soft fruit production is happening around our area. So we were originally known for the bananas, and we've still got our big banana. But we should be supplementing it with the big berries, I think, of some sort as well, you know, because we've got some amazing berry farms, and we are doing a huge amount of the lifting of production for the country in that soft fruit category. And it is an incredibly important contributor to our economy, and we need to make sure that we are trying to work proactively with some of the other challenges that come from intensive farming in all sorts of different farming, but intensive farming and its impact on things like waterways and runoff. So we're really hoping that a grant application we put into the New South Wales Environmental Trust is that we get to go to expression of interest and move forward to look at how do we remediate some of the waterways that have got high levels of nutrients in them, and to have that balance where we do have an impact, we're able to mitigate it with technology that exists. And so we're working with a company who use algae as a way of pumping through an algae pump, and that algae consumes that nutrient and produces a fertiliser that can then be used for fertilising any agricultural setup or even a home garden or whatnot. But it's the use of algae to consume those nutrients, and then what you pump back into the river system or the lake system that you're trying to remediate is much cleaner water. So having the ability to remediate some of the damage and doing it earlier rather than later.
So these are two very big pieces of the RDA Mid-North Coast puzzle that we've just been talking about. What else fits in there?
Oh, look, I'm not sure if fit is right, though we are really interested in trying to continue the spotlight on the efforts in the circular economy in the region. And so we're really proud of the progress that has been made at Cundall with IQ Renew.
Yes.
And very soon that place is going to be producing fence posts from the soft plastic recycling schemes. And I just want to encourage everyone to get back into their return to store program so that feedstock is actually made available. We've got a long way to go in terms of ensuring a consistent supply to these recyclers of that stock, because you've got plant and equipment and you can't have it sitting around doing nothing. And so we've got to make sure that us as a community, we do things like advocate to councils for the Kirby program, where you're able to, with your council's help, you can just put your soft plastics in a bag in your yellow lid bin, and that will end up pathing its way to Taree to be turned into fence posts for farmers to use or whatnot. So there is a lot of opportunity for us in the circular economy with incredible proponents like them being in our midst. Of course, like every other regional area, we've got real challenges in housing, and we've been trying to use the opportunities to advocate into government to look at things like we need a class 1.5 for regional Australia. So you've got class 1 buildings that aren't anything to do with a high rise, and then you've got class 2, and it's the minute I think it's over 3 stories or something small like that, the same obligations as the Rialto Towers has for safety materials and whatnot get applied. And it means that the density and the diversity of housing stock we so desperately need in regional Australia is totally unaffordable. And so we need to look at regulating, the walk up, walk down apartments, or, things that are of a modest scale that fit density in regional Australia, and doing something smart with the building code that makes it possible for us to deliver that kind of diversity in housing stock, because we've got people who are aging out, who are not doing well in their 5-bedroom houses out in the sticks in Lowana, but don't have the ability to get into something that is going to work for them for the next phase of their life. And we've got some real challenges in the way that we're regulating the building industry. I know that safety is critical as well, but we've got to find that fine balance that's going to allow regional Australia and the people who are living in regional Australia to have the diversity of housing stock they need to be able to thrive.
No, I was speaking with the Mayor of Bellingen the other week, and he was talking about the idea of green fill.
Yeah.
So this is, you've got a big backyard. Can something be built there?
Yeah. So there are some councils that are already using infill as a strategy, particularly to counter the inability to get more of the municipal services like sewer and water. So some places are aggressively pursuing the infill development, which is great because we do need that density. If you look at, say, for example, Coffs Harbour, if you could see out, you'll be looking straight into these beautiful mountains and the beginnings of the Great Dividing Range. And then if you look that way, you're looking at the ocean.
That's right.
And so we really are land constrained, but we've got the opportunity to improve our density because we've got these amazing quarter-acre blocks that could certainly have things like granny flats or tiny houses or small dwellings, which would make the current servicing, you're getting the best bang for your buck on the current services that are existing. That is definitely a strategy because we really do need to address the diversity question in terms of regional Australia's housing stock. And it's not just my region, it's everywhere. And it's only one of the levers.
We touched on it earlier that Lord Howe Island is part of your remit.
We went over a couple of months ago to Lord Howe to really get to grips with how the island works and what are some of the synergies between Norfolk Island and Lord Howe Island. And we left really feeling like there's a lot to do. Island communities have very pointy end challenges that are not easily overcome, and even simple things like even considering expanding the country university centre model to look at supporting a very small community, but a community that their education is curtailed at year 6. And it's not every family and it's not every child that wants to leave their island home and go to a boarding school, or indeed have their whole family come over. Not everyone has the means to be able to do that, and not every child has the aptitude or desire for that to be their education journey, but there aren't choices. So we've got a lot to do in terms of trying to find innovative and new ways of being able to help do more with the very serious constraints on the islands. Like you can't just build a house on Lord Howe, both for planning controls, but also good luck getting the equipment and the certifiers and all of these things over there. It's an order of magnitude more complicated because the World Heritage Area actually covers the settlement as well. And so it's mind-blowingly complicated, as well as being extremely beautiful. And there's a lot that, say, Norfolk Island and Lord Howe Island can leverage off of in terms of pest eradication. So on Lord Howe, they got rid of the rats and the cats, and they've managed to do that. And then I saw the Providence petrels that kept the Norfolk Islanders alive, but they're completely gone from Norfolk Island now, but they're on Lord Howe. And the pest eradication and adequate food supply so that they're not being eaten, but they're just flourishing. It's this extraordinary ecosystem that now has a real chance to flourish thanks to the work of, I think, New South Wales State Government and the Lord Howe Island people around that pest eradication, and of course the board. So it's this extraordinary ecosystem. If only we could do it for Norfolk too, find some way to do it for Norfolk too. That's a project in my mind.
Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, look, there's, as I said earlier, it's a huge geographical region with a lot of issues, challenges.
It's a strange feeling to be sitting in this moment in history, in this role, and thinking, oh, blimey, I wish I had a silver bullet, and I don't. Not for any of them. We've got lots of bright ideas, and we're not afraid to try and take on things that are sort of new, because I think we need new. I think we need to be looking for novel solutions to some of the challenges, because we've been trying conventional solutions for a while, and I don't think it's serving us anymore. I don't think it serves the moment. So we are, I feel like we're slightly out there on a limb with things like looking at trying to get AI access for regional players, or some of the technologies that we're trying to explore around solving some of the municipal challenges that all local governments face, or championing the circular economy or whatnot. But I think we've just got to have a crack at trying to bring some of the new ideas and new things into our thinking and into the logic of bureaucracy and governance and whatnot, to see if we can shift a dial in a pointy moment.